Every person wants success, but few are willing to do what success demands. It's not the grand gestures or sudden strokes of luck that shape a successful life. It's the quiet, unseen habits that are repeated day after day. You don't stumble into success. You cultivate it through deliberate, disciplined behavior. Every habit you form is a seed planted in the soil of your future, and the harvest depends on what you plant. We live in a world that celebrates inspiration but often ignores discipline. Motivation may start the engine, but discipline keeps it running long after the excitement fades. There will be mornings when you won't feel like showing up, when the goal feels distant and the effort seems heavy. But that is the moment success is being forged. The act of pushing yourself, especially when you don't want to, is the essence of greatness. Winners are not more talented, they are more consistent. Your habits are the invisible architecture of your destiny. Every repeated action either builds or breaks the person you're becoming. If you constantly practice procrastination, you're not just delaying tasks, you're shaping a personality of avoidance. If you constantly take initiative, you're not just completing work, you're building an identity of responsibility and power. The secret is to design habits that align with the future you desire, and then force yourself to live them until they become second nature. There's a law that governs the universe as surely as gravity, the law of cause and effect. Every effect in your life can be traced back to a cause, and most of those causes are habitual actions. Success doesn't choose favorites. It simply responds to consistent effort, focused intention, and the discipline to do what most people won't. When you force yourself to build habits that move you forward, you trigger that law in your favor. Your environment plays a silent but powerful role in this transformation. You cannot grow in an environment that nurtures mediocrity. You become like the people and places you spend time with. Surround yourself with reminders of your goals. Simplify your space, remove distractions, and fill your surroundings with symbols of progress. The right environment makes good habits easier and bad habits harder. You don't rise to the level of your intentions. You fall to the level of your systems. The first days of forming a new habit are often uncomfortable. The mind resists change because it clings to the familiar. But if you can push through the friction, just long enough for your effort to take root, you'll discover a powerful truth. Discipline eventually becomes desire. The habit that once felt like a burden becomes a source of pride. The act of forcing yourself to grow becomes the fuel that keeps you moving. Success is not built in leaps, it is assembled in layers. Small, consistent victories compound quietly over time until they produce extraordinary results. One good decision today becomes two tomorrow. One discipline act becomes a lifestyle, and one habit, practiced daily, can change the entire course of your life. You don't need to transform overnight, you only need to start and stay consistent. If you wish to attract success, don't chase it. Become the kind of person success is drawn to. Force yourself into the habits that align with excellence, consistency, and persistence. Every time you act with discipline, you are sending a signal to the universe, I am ready. And when you're ready, success cannot help but find you. Every great transformation begins with a single act of discipline. The person who waits for motivation will always be waiting, because motivation is fleeting, unreliable, and emotional. It comes and goes like the weather. But discipline is the sun that rises whether you feel like it or not. The moment you stop depending on how you feel and start acting on what you know must be done, that's when your life begins to change. Discipline doesn't ask for comfort, it asks for consistency. It asks you to show up when it's boring, when it's repetitive, when there's no applause and no guarantee of reward. It's in those quiet hours, when nobody's watching, that the foundation of success is laid. Every person who has ever achieved something extraordinary has faced the same resistance, the same doubt, the same temptation to quit. But they pushed through not because they felt powerful, but because they trained themselves to act regardless of their feelings. When you look closely at people who have mastered their craft, you'll notice something simple yet profound. They don't rely on emotion to guide them. They rely on structure, on routine, on doing the work whether they're inspired or not. The writer writes even when the words don't flow. The athlete trains even when the muscles ache. The entrepreneur keeps moving even when results are invisible. That's the discipline that shapes character, and character shapes destiny. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you make a deposit into your future success. You strengthen the part of yourself that leads instead of follows, that creates instead of reacts. The more you practice discipline, the easier it becomes to choose it again tomorrow. Eventually, it becomes who you are, a person who follows through, a person who can be trusted with goals, with dreams, with responsibility. The challenge for most people isn't knowing what to do. It's doing what they already know they should. The path is rarely hidden. It's the walk that's difficult. You already know that waking up early, planning your day, working with focus, Taking care of your health and constantly learning will change your life. But knowledge without execution is like a seed never planted. It holds potential but produces nothing. That's why forcing yourself into disciplined habits matters more than gathering endless inspiration. Because success isn't built on what you wish for. It's built on what you repeatedly do. Every morning you wake up and act with intention. You reinforce a mental pattern that says, I'm in control. Every time you resist the urge to procrastinate, you train your mind to obey your higher goals instead of your lower impulses. Discipline doesn't restrict you, it frees you. It frees you from the chaos of inconsistency, from the guilt of inaction, from the weakness of regret. At first, forcing yourself into disciplined action feels like a battle. The mind resists change, it craves comfort, it rationalizes delay. But once you begin, something remarkable happens. The same force that once resisted you begins to serve you. What was once hard becomes habitual. What was once forced becomes natural. The act of showing up becomes a rhythm, not a burden. That's the quiet magic of discipline. It transforms resistance into momentum. Every day you keep your promise to yourself, you reinforce your integrity. And integrity, more than any external reward, becomes your greatest strength. People who live with discipline attract respect, opportunity, and trust because their actions prove their reliability. They don't wait for life to get easier. They get stronger. They don't wait for the perfect conditions. They act and make conditions perfect. Through consistent discipline, you stop being a wanderer of chance and become an architect of certainty. That's where the true power of success begins to take shape. The habits you form are the quiet architects of your destiny. Each repeated action becomes a brick in the structure of your future self. Most people underestimate the power of small, consistent habits because the results aren't visible right away. But over time, those invisible choices shape everything. Your confidence, your reputation, your opportunities, and your identity. You become what you repeatedly do. If you fill your days with discipline, focus, and purpose, you're not just accomplishing tasks, you're building a character capable of success. The truth is that success doesn't begin when you achieve something grand. It begins the moment you commit to daily behaviors that align with who you want to become. Every habit is a declaration of identity. When you choose habits that reflect strength, order, and growth, you send a message to your subconscious that this is who you are. Most people try to change their results without changing their habits. They chase goals, but ignore the daily routines that determine whether those goals are ever reached. They want to be successful, but still cling to habits of distraction, procrastination, and comfort. The gap between who you are and who you want to be is filled by what you do every single day. If you want to change your life, don't start with your dreams. Start with your habits. If you want to become a leader, practice decisiveness and consistency in small things. If you want to be healthy, practice self-control in what you eat and how you move. The small patterns you follow are training your mind to either rise or remain. Your habits are constantly teaching your brain what to expect from you, and it learns quickly. If you repeatedly skip commitments, your mind stops believing your promises. But if you act with discipline, your mind begins to trust your word, and confidence is born from that trust. The identity you build through your habits becomes your compass. When you develop habits of excellence, success becomes a natural expression of who you are, not something you have to chase. This is why habits matter more than motivation. They define your identity on a subconscious level. You don't have to tell yourself to brush your teeth. You do it automatically because it's part of who you are. Imagine if productivity, persistence, and self-control became just as automatic. You wouldn't need constant reminders or inspiration. Your habits would carry you forward effortlessly. That's what happens when you force yourself into routines that align with your goals long enough for them to become part of your nature. What begins as discipline eventually becomes instinct. The power of identity-based habits lies in their permanence. Temporary motivation fades, but identity is self-sustaining. When you identify as a disciplined person, you naturally behave in disciplined ways. When you see yourself as a learner, you naturally seek growth. Every repetition of a good habit reinforces this identity, making it harder to fall back into old patterns. This is how transformation happens, not through sudden breakthroughs, but through steady, quiet repetition. You don't need to change your entire life overnight. You need to change the rhythm of your days. Your habits are the music your life dances to, and every beat counts. When you shape your habits intentionally, you gain control over the direction of your life. You stop drifting and start designing. You realize that every habit is a vote for the person you wish to become. No single act defines you, but repeated acts do. They etch your character into your behavior until they become indistinguishable. The key is awareness, to recognize which habits are serving you and which ones are stealing your potential. The strongest people in any field aren't always the most gifted. They're the ones who've built identities rooted in productive habits. They have conditioned themselves to perform without hesitation, to act without negotiation, to move forward without waiting for the right mood. Once your habits reflect your higher self, success no longer feels like something you pursue. It becomes something you attract naturally. Everything in life operates under the law of cause and effect. Nothing happens by accident, and nothing of value appears without a cause behind it. Success is not a mystery, nor is failure. Both are outcomes, effects, produced by the consistent causes we set in motion through our habits, thoughts, and decisions. The person who understands this law stops blaming luck, fate, or circumstance. They begin to look inward and ask, what causes am I creating daily that lead to the effects I'm experiencing? Every repeated action is a cause, and over time, those causes form the patterns that shape the quality of our lives. When your causes are rooted in discipline, focus, and consistency, success is inevitable. But when your daily causes are rooted in distraction, doubt, or laziness, the results you experience will always reflect that. The universe is impartial. It rewards effort with outcome, not intention with reward. The beauty of this law lies in its reliability. You don't need to guess whether success will come. You simply need to align your actions with the principles that create it. The person who studies a little every day inevitably becomes knowledgeable. The person who saves a small amount regularly inevitably builds wealth. The person who exercises consistently inevitably becomes strong. These are not miracles. They are the natural consequences of causes applied over time. The law of cause and effect doesn't discriminate. It works for everyone everywhere, all the time. Understanding this frees you from excuses because it makes you realize that your life is fully within your control. If you're not getting the results you want, you don't have to wait for luck or hope for change. You only have to adjust the causes you're creating. Success, then, is a science. It's not reserved for the lucky or the gifted. It's built by those who intentionally create the conditions for it. You can't plant the seeds of idleness and expect a harvest of abundance. You can't sow inconsistency and expect stability. You can't indulge in negativity and expect peace of mind. The universe responds precisely to the energy, thought, and effort you invest. When you force yourself into habits that attract success, habits of discipline, learning, persistence, and clarity, you align yourself with this law. Every productive act becomes a cause, and the effects compound quietly until they manifest visibly in your results. It may take time, but time always serves those who use it wisely. Each day you invest in the right causes, you move closer to the effects you desire, even if you can't see them forming yet. Many people misunderstand this principle and believe that hard work alone guarantees success. But effort without direction is wasted energy. The law of cause and effect demands not only persistence but precision. You must ensure that your efforts are aligned with your goals, that your habits are leading you where you want to go. A person can work tirelessly but achieve little if their causes are misplaced. The key is awareness, knowing that every choice either moves you toward or away from your vision. The smallest adjustments in your habits can produce massive differences in your results over time because causes multiply. Just as one drop of water creates ripples that reach the entire surface of a pond, one consistent habit creates ripples that eventually transform an entire life. When you internalize the law of cause and effect, you stop waiting and start creating. You understand that there are no shortcuts, no accidents, and no real mysteries in success. The person who sows with discipline, patience, and faith will always reap in due season. And even though the harvest doesn't appear immediately, it is always growing beneath the surface. Every action, every thought, every habit is planting something. You are, at every moment, sowing the seeds of your future. The question is not whether the law is working, it always is. The question is what kind of causes you are setting in motion each day, and whether they are designed to produce the success you seek. Your environment is one of the most powerful forces shaping your behavior, whether you realize it or not. The people you surround yourself with, the spaces you live and work in, the sounds, the energy, the habits you observe, all of it influences your thoughts and actions in ways that are often invisible but deeply significant. A person's surroundings can either nurture growth or quietly suffocate potential. If you live in an environment that normalizes distraction, negativity, or complacency, it becomes harder to maintain the focus and drive necessary for success. But if you create an environment that reflects order, purpose, and ambition, it becomes far easier to sustain the habits that lead to achievement. Success is not only about willpower, it's also about design. You can't expect to grow in soil that resists your roots. You must choose or create surroundings that make success the most natural outcome. Every environment carries a silent message. A cluttered desk whispers confusion. A quiet, organized space encourages focus. The company you keep shapes your standards without your awareness. If you spend your days with people who are constantly complaining, procrastinating, or settling for less, you begin to mirror that behavior even when you don't intend to. On the other hand, if you surround yourself with those who aim higher, who take action, who hold themselves accountable, your mind begins to rise to their level. The energy around you becomes a reflection of what you tolerate. If you allow disorder, distraction, and mediocrity into your environment, you are silently giving them permission to influence your life. But when you surround yourself with structure, inspiration, and excellence, you create a climate where good habits thrive effortlessly. The key is to make your environment work for you, not against you. Set it up so that the right choices are easy and the wrong ones are inconvenient. If you want to read more, place books where you can see them. If you want to eat healthier, keep nutritious food within reach and remove temptation from your surroundings. If you want to focus deeply, design your workspace so that it supports attention instead of scattering it. You don't need constant willpower when your environment is built to reinforce your goals. This is why successful people pay so much attention to their surroundings. They understand that environment dictates consistency. It's easier to maintain discipline when your world is structured for it. The same principle applies to social environments. People are contagious. Their attitudes, habits, and expectations can transfer to you faster than you realize. Spend enough time with driven people, and you'll begin to feel uncomfortable being idle. Spend enough time with dreamers who never act, and you'll start rationalizing delay. This is why it's essential to choose your associations with purpose. Be around people who challenge you to become sharper, not those who dull your ambition. The right company doesn't just inspire you. They hold you accountable to your higher self. They remind you of who you can be when you forget. Surround yourself with those who speak growth into your life, who respect effort, and who embody the values you aim to live by. The people around you are either helping you build your future or holding you to your past. Your environment extends beyond physical and social spaces. It also includes what you consume mentally. The media you watch, the words you read, the ideas you entertain all play a role in shaping your state of mind. Every piece of information you allow in either strengthens or weakens your focus. Guard your mind as carefully as you guard your time. Fill it with knowledge, positivity, and clarity. What you allow consistently becomes what you believe, and what you believe determines how you act. To attract success, you must curate your surroundings like a gardener tends to the soil, removing weeds, nurturing growth, and ensuring that every element supports life. You can't always control every detail of your environment, but you can control what you bring into it and how you respond to it. When you build a world that mirrors the discipline and excellence you seek, your habits begin to align naturally with success. The process of building new habits always begins with resistance. The mind is wired to protect what is familiar, even when the familiar no longer serves you. Every time you try to establish a new behavior, you're challenging your brain's comfort zone, and it resists by offering excuses, distractions, and fatigue. This is why so many people give up in the early stages of self-improvement. They mistake discomfort for a signal to stop when in truth, it's a sign that transformation is beginning. Growth always introduces tension between who you've been and who you're becoming. The moment you feel that inner friction, you're standing at the doorway of change. Those who learn to move through the discomfort instead of retreating from it are the ones who eventually reach mastery. The initial struggle isn't a punishment, it's a test of commitment. You have to earn your habits through repetition and persistence until the resistance fades and the action becomes automatic at first. Forcing yourself to stick with a new habit feels unnatural. You have to consciously remind yourself to act differently, to resist the pull of old routines. It feels slower, harder, less rewarding. This is where most people fail, not because the habit is impossible, but because they expect ease too soon. Success requires patience with the process. When you're learning a new habit, your brain is literally rewiring itself, forming new pathways of behavior. That takes energy, time, and effort. The discomfort is simply the cost of reprogramming your mind for a higher standard. Each time you push through that resistance, you're strengthening the connection between intention and action. Over time, the struggle diminishes, and what once required discipline begins to flow with ease. But if you quit in the early stages, you teach your mind that comfort is more valuable than progress, and it will repeat that pattern every time you attempt something new. Persistence through discomfort is what separates achievers from dreamers. Anyone can start strong when the excitement is fresh and the vision is clear. But true strength reveals itself when the novelty wears off. That's the point where most people slow down or stop altogether. The achiever doesn't stop, they adjust, adapt, and keep moving. They understand that consistency is more powerful than bursts of inspiration, even when the progress seems invisible. They trust that each repetition is carving depth into their character. Every time they act in alignment with their goals, they reinforce the mindset that says, I follow through no matter how I feel. That kind of inner dialogue becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you condition yourself to move forward despite discomfort, you're building emotional endurance, the kind that keeps you steady under pressure and unstoppable in uncertainty. The greatest mistake you can make is believing that discomfort means something is wrong. In truth, it's a sign that you're stretching your limits. Discomfort is the weight that strengthens your discipline. Just as muscles grow only when pushed beyond their comfort zone, your mind grows only when challenged to act beyond its current patterns. Every habit that leads to success carries this temporary period of friction. The early mornings, the long hours, the sacrifices, the doubts. All of it is part of the process of breaking through inertia. The people who seem to achieve effortlessly are simply those who've endured this phase long enough to make it automatic. Their habits now serve them, but once they had to serve their habits first. They had to show up again and again when it was inconvenient, until the struggle transformed into stability. The truth is that comfort and growth cannot coexist. You must choose which one you value more. If you seek comfort, you'll repeat what you already know. If you seek growth, you'll willingly face discomfort because you understand it's temporary. The pain of discipline fades, but the regret of quitting lingers far longer. When you learn to see resistance not as an obstacle, but as a signal that you're on the right path, persistence becomes natural. Every habit worth having demands a price at the beginning. Pay it willingly. It's the toll that turns intention into identity and effort into excellence. The more discomfort you can endure in pursuit of your vision, the closer you come to mastering yourself, and mastery of self is the foundation of every form of success. Small wins often go unnoticed, but they carry within them the seed of transformation. The power of small, consistent actions is one of the most underestimated truths in the journey toward success. People often believe that change requires massive effort, dramatic shifts, or sudden breakthroughs, but in reality, success is built one disciplined act at a time. Every small victory reinforces the belief that progress is possible. It trains your mind to associate effort with reward, and it builds momentum that compounds quietly over time. When you focus on winning small each day, completing a task, keeping a promise, staying consistent, you set in motion a chain of effects that eventually lead to extraordinary results. The process is slow, but it's reliable. The greatest transformations are rarely explosive. They're gradual, born from persistence and faith in small, steady improvement. At first, small wins may seem insignificant. You might look at your effort and feel as though nothing is changing. You wake up early, you read a few pages, you practice a skill, and yet the results don't seem to match the effort. But this is where most people lose sight of how growth actually works. Success compounds invisibly. Every small action is a deposit into your future, even if it doesn't yield immediate returns. A single day of discipline may not transform your life, but 1,000 disciplined days will. Just as a drop of water can carve stone over time, your habits carve your destiny through repetition. The effects of your effort accumulate silently, until one day, the difference is undeniable. That's the moment when the world calls you an overnight success, not realizing the years of small wins that made it possible. When you begin to value small wins, you stop chasing perfection and start embracing consistency. You no longer wait for the perfect moment to act because you realize that progress is built through movement, not timing. Small wins create momentum, and momentum creates motivation. The hardest part of any goal is the beginning, but once you've started, once you've stacked enough small wins, the process begins to pull you forward. What once required discipline begins to feel natural, and what once felt impossible starts to feel inevitable. The habit of progress becomes addictive. Each success, no matter how minor, strengthens your confidence and belief in your own ability to create change. This self-trust becomes the foundation of long-term achievement. The compounding power of small wins also protects you from the emotional roller coaster of setbacks. When your focus is on consistent daily improvement, failure loses its sting. A single mistake no longer feels like the end of the world because you understand that your success is not defined by one moment, but by the sum of many small efforts. You begin to view challenges as temporary and success as inevitable. That shift in mindset is powerful. It gives you resilience. It keeps you grounded in progress rather than perfection. Each day becomes an opportunity to improve by a fraction, and those fractions multiplied by time produce exponential change. You no longer need motivation to keep going because you can see proof of growth in every small step you take. The difference between those who succeed and those who quit often lies in their ability to recognize the value of small wins. The unsuccessful wait for big breaks and dramatic outcomes, while the successful quietly build their future one deliberate action at a time. They understand that consistency is the ultimate amplifier. Each repetition refines skill, strengthens willpower, and builds the invisible momentum that eventually leads to visible success. You don't need to do everything at once. You only need to do something today, and then repeat it tomorrow. The magic of compounding will do the rest. Over weeks, months, and years, these small wins begin to stack into unstoppable progress. The path to greatness is not made of grand leaps, but of steady, disciplined steps taken with patience and conviction. Each small win is a promise kept to yourself, and every promise kept brings you closer to the life you've envisioned